think the Minister wants to get in as well, I think.
I think so.
So I'll be brief, and I just want to take the opportunity to raise a certain number of issues. I think many of them have been raised already, but I think we can't say them or mention them often enough. I come from rural Ireland. I come from where I represent rural towns, and there are quite a number of small businesses. Some of them closed over the last number of years because of the recession. Some of them open and struggling. Some of them, the only thing that does keep them open is the name over the door, the pride. And some of these people would be far better off if they closed their premises and wouldn't have the costs and expenses. I know a particular business at the moment where 2 pensioners are subsidising their shop to keep it open. And yes, they're being hit with €4,000 rates a year that they cannot afford to pay. And a problem has arisen over the last number of years. They were paying what they could afford to pay, agreed with the council. And now I seen a bill only last week for over €20,000. Like, there's no reason at all to what's happening out there in relation to rates, quite honestly. And it's mentioned, I think, in the bill that people are going to have to pay what they have to pay now, and there's been a revision all over the country, well, particularly in County Sligo and Roscommon and South Donegal, where the rates have been revised, in most cases upwards, and the people couldn't afford what they were paying before this, and now they're being asked to pay more. And all that's going to happen is it's going to result in shop closures, businesses closing, and jobs lost. And we hear about these new supermarkets, and I'm going to mention them here tonight when they arrive, and they're going to create 25 or 30 jobs. But there's no mention about the 30 jobs that they're closing down the street or in the other street in the town or close to that town. There's no mention of that at all. And these people are given a blank cheque. And I think, and I know the government is trying, I know Michael Ring is trying as well, he has a scheme going there to try and regenerate activity in rural towns. And it's a good idea and it needs to be done. But unfortunately, I hope it's not too late, because we have allowed a lot of out-of-town shopping. And it's fine with the big goods, you know, the bulky goods, that's fine. But the food business, it's a mistake that let it out of the centre of a town. We were fortunate in Sligo that over the years, the Sligo County Council, through its development plan, preserves the centre of Sligo town for food shopping. And because of that food shopping, there's a lot of other businesses that survives around it, lives off it. And the bulk stuff is out, you know, it's a mile or 2 miles out in the shopping centres and everything else, and it's working. But had we allowed what happened in other towns happen in Sligo, I can tell you that the centre of Sligo town would be a ghost town. Now, it has gone through a rough patch over the last number of years, but it is fighting back and it is coming back. But it's coming back because of the businesses that was maintained inside in the town. There was a mention here of putting a charge on shops, empty shops. Well, I know quite a number of these premises, and if the person could rent them at this stage at a very reasonable rent, they would rent them and they would generate income for them. But there's nobody to rent these properties at the moment. That's the harsh reality. Some of these places have been closed for years, and I honestly believe, and I said it here in the Dáil before, there should be some help and support for these buildings in these rural towns that could be used for residential purposes. And it's, you know, the housing crisis we all hear about in Dublin and Galway, Cork and Limerick, but it's beginning to affect rural towns now, because nothing has been built for the last 15 or 17 or 18 years, unfortunately. And these premises could be used, and great use made of them, by giving some bit of a tax incentive to try and get the people that own these. They can't afford to do it, quite honestly, many of them. And if there was a tax incentive, it wouldn't cost the government 1 cent. Give a tax incentive on the rent over 10 years, and I believe that people would do up these premises, and you'd have people living in them and take the pressure off some other parts of the county. I know it was mentioned about the arrears. Quite honestly, I don't know how anybody who couldn't afford to pay, and who had an arrangement with the local authority is going to be able to pay 8 or 9 or 10,000. It's just not there. They haven't got it. And that's the reality. And I know different councils do different deals with people, but it's difficult to get that point across. I know of a family at the minute, one particular family, and I'd say the person, that particular individual, feels so responsible for this money. If he had it in the morning, he'd write a cheque and pay it. It's affecting the man's health. That's a fact. It is affecting the man's health to the extent that he doesn't know what to do. Now, I've made arrangements. We're going to go and see somebody in the council to try and sort this problem out. And he was better, really, and so if he closed the premises, but he doesn't want to do that either. Pride, you see, pride is a big thing. And it's a difficult situation where we're trying to deal with it. But like trying to go after a man like that, you know, you're wasting your time, quite honestly. And he was paying what was agreed, and I thought at that time that that was sufficient rates to ensure that he'd be okay. But now you see it's all adding on and adding on and adding on again, which is very, very unfair. Rates, I believe, there should be some relationship with what a business or a premises can earn to what they pay in rates. I know small little businesses doing very well, very, big earners can, generate a lot of profit, and then you can see a big place, 4 or 5 times the size, paying 4 times the rates probably, and not earning probably a tenth of what this other business can earn. So there needs to be some relationship brought in to try and tie the income from a property to what you pay in rates. That isn't there at the moment. It's all based on the rental income of I understand, of there used to be, whatever rental income. The rate is based on a percentage of the rental income, an annual rate. And that hasn't worked either, quite honestly. There's talk tonight about bars and pubs and lounges and that. There are bars, as I said earlier. There are small bars doing very well. There are big bars, nobody in them, quite honestly, in the rural areas, and particularly over the last 2 months, like those businesses have been hit very, very, very hard because of rules and regulations that we debated another time. But I tell you, the government are going to notice a big change in the VAT returns in early March, when the returns come in for the first 2 months of this year. I'm afraid it's going to be very serious, and the businesses themselves have suffered as well, profit-wise, over those few months. And look, I think something, it has to change. I do accept that. It does need to change. But at the same time, we want to bring in changes that's going to be realistic and achievable and make it easier for people to be able to pay the rates, that they can at least earn the income to pay the rates. Thank you. That's concluded.
Thank you.